Greetings, my fellow wealth hackers. This is Erwin Cito bringing you the Truth About Real Estate Investing show. Did you know that ski season came and it's almost over? I bought ski boots, brand new ski boots in this past December, to replace the ski boots that I've been using since high school. So those boots are over 20 years old. Yes, I'm that frugal. Then that same weekend, the ski season was basically canceled, along with our ski trip vacation plans. Fast forward to this past weekend. Hidden Valley Ski Resort up north called us back to let us know they were open. Cherry jumped on the opportunity to order ski lessons for everyone but me. So the kids got lessons both Saturday and Sunday. Cherry got one lesson as well. We bought all the equipment used for our kids last year. So all their boots and skis, they're all used except for their helmets, as we like to save money on stuff. But where I don't cheap out on is education. And that would include ski lessons for the kids, especially. And for Cherry. I don't want her to get hurt, so she needs to learn how to do these things. Whenever I've cheaped out on education, it's come back to bite me so many times. Staying with the skiing example, I grew up, well, I fell lots of times learning to ski as growing up. But I remember when I first took up snowboarding. I don't think I call it took up snowboarding. The first time I tried snowboarding, I rented a snowboard while I was a university student. And for anyone who's tried to learn snowboarding, my story was no different. I fell hard on my butt, on my knees, on my head, and often. I was probably close to concussion, having seen stars more than once while smacking my head on the ground. And I also broke my wrist. I was about 20 years old at the time, maybe 21. Anyways, yeah, so I broke my wrist trying to break my fall at one point. And then I didn't know it was broken, so I kept going. And so I just made sure to not fall on that wrist again. So I just fall on my back or my shoulder. Good plan. So fast forward to present. I'm a bit more experienced, likely less wiser, thanks to those hits to the head. And I have a bit more money in my pocket, thanks to real estate and stock hacking. So everyone gets lessons, but me. I ski now. I did take lessons when I was a bit older to learn how to snowboard. I can snowboard. I just choose not to. Skiing is just a lot easier. To each their own. Now to bring this to real estate, what the novice investor does is that they try to learn things on their own, with no coach, no mentor, or sometimes worse, free advice. I've seen it a million times. And there's another example of friends of mine will pay for rep hockey lessons for the rep hockey and lessons for their kids, so they'll spend tens of thousands of dollars a year. But they won't take a $5,000 course from me, nor hire one of my coaches who are licensed realtors that will teach them to provide their family regular cash flow and build wealth. Again, to each their own. But here's a quick story to share. I hosted a virtual meetup last night for all the stock hackers, where over 200 attended. At the end of the night, I started randomly asking past students, saying, I just say their name and I ask how their stock hacking has gone. So this is completely random, unrehearsed, unplanned. And the answers astounded me. I purposely picked on one young lady because I knew she was conservative, and she had been returning 45% for the last year. Answers varied. I polled just randomly, folks. I was not completely randomly. I was looking for folks who've been in the course for at least a year. And answers varied from 40 to 50% of return on investment over the past 12 months. Not too shabby. Maybe that doesn't interest you, but for all these students, all these past clients of Stock Hacker Academy, they feel their lives are changed. We may be a bunch of beginners, but we are beating a lot of the most expensive money managers in the world. No different than us real estate investors. There's no or here. It's real estate for wealth and stock hacking for cash flow. Speaking of real estate, I just got off a Zoom call with Stephen from Meridian Credit Union about his talk at his upcoming presentation the morning of Saturday, March 27th, where he's going to share how one may purchase properties in a corporation and not have to have the mortgage appear on one's credit. In my humble opinion, I've been around for a while, and I've run this by a couple of former mortgage people as well. This is the best strategy for those who want to own multiple properties. For example, if a client comes to me and they want to own 10 properties, it's unlikely their personal credit will cover 10 properties, so they're going to have to do some in a corporation. And again, from my understanding and from my discussion with Steven, they don't put those mortgages on your personal credit bureau. So that's only a good thing. Meridian also finances student rentals, so I look forward to learning more about their program, and that is on Saturday, March 27th, the morning of. We will also have on hand Andy Tran of Suite Editions to share about the latest in backyard suites. Now, backyard suites is a term that I made up for self-contained apartments. It's like a 2-bedroom apartment, bathroom, kitchen, has its own furnace, hot water heater, all those sorts of things for a family to live in, located in a backyard of an investment property. Or it could be your home. This may very well be the final frontier for major value adds to an investment property to maximize rental income. Before we could do legal duplexes, our business was largely revolved around. Well, we did a lot of small multifamilies, and then a lot of cities were cracking down on zoning. So then we pivoted to student rentals, and then ever since the ability to get permits and do legal basements legally, to do basement apartments legally, that's been our most recent pivot about 3-4 years ago, and now this will possibly be our final pivot, the backyard suite for potentially a third apartment on one investment property. So you don't want to miss Andy's latest updates on where to buy these properties and how to execute them, how to get them financed, and whatnot. Anyone who's on my email list receives updates on our events, plus when a new podcast episode comes out. All you need to do is go to www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca. Again, that's www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca. Enter your name and email, and that's it. I think you do have to click submit. But other than that, you'll be able to be on my email list to see all of our upcoming events, and I hope to see you at the upcoming monthly Island Real Estate Networking meeting. These are virtual for now, and we fully plan to be back once we're legally allowed to do so. FYI, all ticket proceeds go to charity. On to this week's show. This week we have one of our clients, Tony Cheung, who just recently moved to Canada from China, so his kids may have more opportunity. Tony's journey to arrive in Canada started somewhere else in China, and it wasn't the smoothest. He was born in China, and he was raised by his grandmother, as his parents, due to the downturn in the economy, manufacturing was closing. They actually moved to a different country. They moved to Scotland without him, leaving him behind to be raised by his grandmother. Later on, he did move to Scotland and met his parents for what he felt was the first time. He grew up working in a family Chinese takeout restaurant in small town Scotland, and then he moved on to working a very difficult corporate job with long hours, and then more recently he was investing in houses with basement apartments to build long-term wealth. To me, I feel episodes like this are just a friendly reminder that we live in the greatest country in the world. Please enjoy the show. Hi, Tony.
Owen, how are you doing?
Excellent. What's keeping you busy these days?
Everything. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to the podcast. I've heard a few of your followers and their stories, so I'd like to use this opportunity to share mine.
Yeah, we've had some wild stories on here. It's funny because people are like, "Is that normal?" No, it isn't normal. You know what? This isn't normal. The amount of effort that people put in. Our past guests, they are all above average. That's the truth about real estate. That is the truth about real estate. They've all put in above average effort into becoming excellent in their fields. So no, our average guest is not average. These are not average results. But I do believe, like we were talking about Katara before we started recording.
Yes.
She makes zero excuses. There are very few people who make zero excuses. So that's what I think sets some of these people apart from the rest.
Yeah. What I found, and obviously I've watched and listened to a few of those already, what I find the common theme with a lot of your previous guests to date is they're all about go-getters.
Mm-hmm.
And they go get, and they make whether it's a profession, they make something of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like no complaints. And it's like, if I don't give it my best shot, then, why would you grumble, right? So I think that's one of the key things. And hopefully, I can share my journey to where I am, and hope that, it resonates with your viewers, your listeners out there, and, find your journey. And because we're here to share, I wouldn't say successes, how we've progressed and how we want to build both our wealth, our income, because everyone has their own commitments, their families, our needs and wants. And I think, people out there needs to know if they want to, go get and find like-minded people, hopefully like ourselves, and wait for their turn for sharing their journey to your, future listeners and past and present.
So speaking of like people who hustle, you had your previous employment required a sizable commitment.
The sizable commitment in terms of my time.
Yeah.
So in terms of, work-life balance was very challenging.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that could be said of the same with a majority of people out there who are under employment.
I don't know. Okay, so hang on. How many hours were you working a week? Because I've talked to your wife.
I think it depends. I mean, I guess during 2020 was very, very abnormal. And obviously it's very difficult with family and online schooling. But at its peak in March, obviously with COVID, I was clocking maybe anything between 60 to 80 hours a week, because it was very challenging times. And I'll explain a little bit why and obviously what I do and why that came about. But it was very, very difficult. And luckily I managed to survive that. And it also gave me a perspective of what's important to me.
Right. I would say barely survive, because if I'm hearing it from your wife, then I'm sure it's not pretty.
Well, it comes with the territory. And I believe I'm not the only one. I think. And how I've managed to survive this is also, with friends and family and colleagues, to kind of weather the storm and come out better and better equipped, moving forward. I think, it was a bit of an ordeal, but I think, a lot could be said with everyone else's own, challenges and battles.
Yeah, because my understanding is you work for a multinational.
Yes.
You were an executive, so you did get paid like an executive.
Sure, yeah.
But from your wife's stories, where you're still working at midnight.
Yeah.
And then you get up at 6 a.m. as well to work.
Yes.
You're working at 6 a.m. as well.
Yes. So it was quite challenging times. And I think maybe, this is where I was. Maybe I can give you, a few steps back in terms of the background of, why I'm here in Canada. So for you guys out there, hopefully I'll keep it short and sweet. So I was born in Hong Kong. When I was born,
people will be able to tell that from your accent.
yeah, definitely. You don't want to put a mugshot because you might not recognize the voice with what I look like. But anyway, so I was born in Hong Kong in the 70s. So right now, I'm on the wrong side of 40s. So I was born in Hong Kong. And when I was a month old, my father had to emigrate to Scotland to work and send money back. Because back in the 70s, I don't know whether, for you millennials out there, that was where there was a movement in Hong Kong where they migrated all the factories from Hong Kong, made in Hong Kong, to made in China. And my parents actually worked in a garment industry in a factory in Hong Kong. And the mid-70s was a challenging times where they migrated a lot of, these factories, as it were, up north, And when I was born...
To a different country.
Yes. Yeah. Well, from Hong Kong to China itself, physically.
Right.
So my parents lost their jobs. Obviously, my mother was looking after me.
And just for folks, just for a history lesson, Hong Kong at the time was under British rule, separate government, separate entity, democratic government?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes.
Versus communism.
Yes.
So not everyone wants to go to a communist country. People are going to say, "Oh, why don't you just go with the jobs?" It's really different to go live in a communist country.
You couldn't actually, migrate with your job to China at the time.
Yeah.
So,
and the standards would be very different: living standards, work standards,
yes,
pay standards.
Yes.
Sorry, continue.
Sure. And then basically, my father had to emigrate to Scotland. A cousin he knew, and obviously being Chinese, the only thing that we knew was maybe work and run and manage like a Chinese takeaway And that's very, very common back in the 70s and 80s in the first kind of migrants to the UK. I can't speak for North America, which was probably a bit more like further ahead of us in terms of timelines in the migration.
So it's a restaurant.
In a restaurant trade. Yeah. And then basically my father sent money back and to keep me going. And then my mother also had to leave Hong Kong because one income from UK or Scotland was insufficient to keep me and my grandparents, to give them income. So my mom also emigrated to Scotland when I was 1 year old. And then my grandparents looked after me from 1 till 5. So during that time, I didn't know who my parents were. At the time, physically, I felt my grandparents were my parents. And because because my mom had an extended family, my uncle, my youngest uncle, is like 5 years older than me. So we would play as like siblings. So I would know better because from 1 year old to 5, the only family I knew was my uncles and aunties and my grandparents as my parents. And then when I was 5 years old, my grandmother took me to UK. And at the time, there was no direct flights from England or London to Scotland. So my grandma and I got on a plane when I was 5 years old. My grandma didn't know any English, so I was trying to help her in terms of just following the flow of people, where to look for a gate, things like that. And then my father would drive I think 7 hours or so from Scotland to London, England, UK, to pick us up. And then when we got home, my grandma was like, "Here's your mom and here's your father." I was like, and you can just imagine that was pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, you didn't know them.
Didn't know them. So
so you didn't even talk to them over the phone, nothing?
It was not as advanced back then. So
no Facebook,
nothing,
Instagram, email?
No, nothing. So it's complete strangers. And my grandma stayed with us for, I would say, about 6 months. I think at the time, the visa was 6 months. And my grandma had to leave at the crack of dawn because she would be worried that, I wouldn't be able to handle it if I was to, see her leave and depart physically. So it was pretty difficult times at the time. But it gives you a sense of, you're grateful for a lot of things because, you kind of start off with not much. So I think that's the early childhood.
Are your kids going to listen to this?
Yeah, hopefully they will. In terms of understanding and appreciating what they have.
Do they know this story?
Yeah, they know some of it. Yeah, I try to give them that grounding. And shortly afterwards, my sister was born, so it was like complete strangers, like basically a new mom and dad, and then a sibling from nowhere. So that was the initial upbringing, and then I think we stayed in Perth for about less than a year, and then we moved to a village of, at the time, maybe 2,000, and the village or the town is called Tayport, up in the northeast. Really nice community, and I basically grew up there for about 20 years. And why there? And my parents, they started off as a joint venture with a local Chinese takeaway. And why my parents wanted to open there was, lack of competition. So it was basically, hopefully a monopoly within that market.
Right.
And new environment, new schools, new Western friends, because I would be probably one of the first Chinese families there, ever. So I would say it was tough in the first year, but after that, it was I was just part of the community. So I was there for 20 years. And having your parents with a eatery, and my sister and I would be working, at in the back shop at an early age. So we were well versed in grafting and, very determined, resilience. And I remember times where my sister and I were actually sleeping underneath the counter. I'm pretty sure nowadays this is all unacceptable. And I'm sure nowadays it's probably illegal, right? But back when, everyone had to survive. And that's how we kind of grew, our upbringing.
I think any listener who's frequented family-owned Chinese restaurants have seen that before, especially folks our age. That was kind of the standard. The kids would be the kids of the family-owned operation would be doing their homework or working in the business or, sleeping under the counter. Like, I've seen it many times.
Yeah. So it gives you a good grounding, gives you a good perspective. And because in terms of the work that we were doing, like basically, if you don't show up to work, if you didn't work, there would be no income, essentially. So that was a very, very early age that, you had to graft, you had to work for something and to appreciate what you get. And, what I find in life is that even though you might work hard, it doesn't mean that the income is guaranteed. You can work whatever hours, open the shop and open whatever hours, whatever there's no customers, right? So there was always constant worry in terms of, okay, I've done my part, prepared everything, prepped everything, but is the customers coming in? And then you've got other stakeholders in that trade that you have to kind of manage and worry about, like environmental health, which is the hygiene, tax inspectors, banks, and things like that. So at a very early age, because my parents' English was not, fluent per se, but yes, they can communicate. I was basically being the oldest and was kind of tasked with a lot of these things that I would go into, meetings with my parents, with the bank or lawyers or accountants to help them. So, at an age, had that grounding to work hard. Yeah, that was the initial part, and then attended a local, school.
Before we even go to that, what were your working conditions like? Because I hear Scotland can get cold.
Not Canada cold. I'm so ignorant. I felt, when I first visited Canada with my wife, we were going out at the time. I came over in winter, and I had my UK leather jacket. And I thought, this will be fine. But no, it doesn't prepare you for that.
Right. From a tropical climate to Canada winter, sure.
Yeah. So everything's new in Canada for me. I've been here for about 2.5 years. So I did my schooling.
Before that.
Mm-hmm.
So back to your job.
Yeah. Which job?
The family job.
The family
business.
job, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was your day-to-day like?
My day-to-day,
it's really easy, right?
Yeah.
Video games, TikTok, smartphones.
Oh, everything's available back then, yeah. Not quite. I think in terms of just representative of that childhood was, maybe my, before I was 10 or early teens, my typical day would be obviously get on the school bus with my sister. And then it was like a half-hour school ride to the secondary school. Finish that, get a school bus home. I'd get home for about 3-4 o'clock. Sister and I would be working in the shop, serving and then we'd finish, the rush hour, maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And then we'd be doing our homework. And then at weekends, because at the time we, obviously Monopoly and, we were well received with the local community. We were very busy. I mean, I can remember the weekends where we'd be working till about 11 at night, Friday, Saturday. And then, once I finish, my sister and I, when we could manage it, we'd be studying because we felt that that would give us an option of not a better future, but options in the future, and to have walked that journey where we could use that experience and journey to teach our kids. Mm-hmm. That was the whole reason for it. So we worked really hard, but we also try to study where we can and the hope that, that will give us options in the future. And that's what it did.
Mm-hmm. So what options did that open up? Because you're very educated.
Well, just, I think at the time, obviously in the late 80s and 90s, everyone wanted student life. And obviously my parents were didn't get a decent education. And, obviously, going back and forth, my parents never had any education because they had to pay for their education. Very smart people, very hardworking, but didn't have that opportunity. They were not able to guide my sister and I on what to study at college or at uni. And having an eatery with an opportunity to speak to and see all walks of life also really, really helped. We had a customer who was like a lecturer, professor at a local university. So I'd be speaking to him and say, like, what's the opportunities? What would he suggest? And he said, well, why don't you try accounting? And I did accounting at school, and I was pretty proficient with it. I was pretty decent at science, but not in biology. So, numbers, economics, accounting, sciences like physics and chemistry, anything that was like systematic, like math-based, formula-based, I was quite good at. Not because I was gifted, because as I said, like my grounding was resilience and determination. I made it my job if, my classmate, Erwin, who would understand the class, the lesson straight up, I wouldn't. If I needed to read it and redo it second or third time, I would. So that's where that resilience and determination came from at an early age. And I was offered a position, offered a place at university doing accounting. In Scotland, I was in my 5th year, and I could have stayed a year to do my 6th year, which would be like an A-level equivalent for all UK and listeners out there. And my grades were pretty decent, so I didn't need to do my 6th year. And I went to uni when I was 17. But at that time, you would have uni friends who were 16 or 17, not because they were gifted or talented, but because if your grades were pretty decent, and if you're at your certain year that you were like the youngest, you turned out to be, one of the youngest students at university. So I was pretty wide-eyed at the time, not well prepared in terms of that university life. And I went through the 4-year course and I graduated with accounting major, accounting and finance. And then I looked for a job in accounting. And it was quite difficult in Scotland because there's not many jobs, and I wouldn't say being Chinese was different, but I'd say by appearance, because of what I looked like, that was also a challenge because one, there's not enough traineeships in UK to train as an accountant. Back when in the 90s, I think the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Scotland, they only had an intake of 400 places for the whole of UK. So I had to wait my turn.
The whole of UK.
And then I waited my turn. I changed a job, changed a different an accounting practice, and then I proved myself. I worked as an assistant, so I had to start somewhere. I proved myself, and then the accounting firm honored their verbal with me that they'll give me an opportunity to enroll me to this traineeship, which was only 400 for the whole of UK, and that was one institute. There's other institutes, but the one that I joined was the Scottish Institute. And I went through that 3-year traineeship where I had work experience and went through more exams. And I qualified in 2001. And then 2002, I packed my bags. I probably had about equivalent of 10,000 CAD dollars. And I went back to Hong Kong with one suitcase because...
One way.
It was one way. And why it was as such was I always had a soft spot where my grandparents looked after me. So I wanted to stay with them to get to know them. So I went back to see whether I could learn something and maybe survive in a city, because I came from a village of 2,000. And I thought, well, to give you some context, a condo complex would have 2,000. So essentially, you were fitting my town into one block. And I thought, well, maybe I could go back and, if I learn something and survive the city, then I'm quite prepared for anything and everything. Right. That was the idea. And the bonus was stay with my grandparents, get to know them again, and then, and see where that goes in that journey.
So moving for folks to give you context, moving back to the city means moving to a city with a population of over 6 million people in the size of the city of Toronto. So city of Toronto, largest city in Canada. So Toronto proper is like 2.6, I think, million, not GTA. So Hong Kong is about the size of the city of Toronto. So we're talking about almost 3 times.
Yeah, I think now it's like the population is like 7 million.
Yeah, I know.
It's pretty crazy. But
trying to backdate it to when you went.
Yeah, so it's so I went back to Hong Kong back in 2002.
Yeah,
and that was for for people out there. This might also remind you that was almost straight after the .com crash. Jobs were hard to come by. That was 2002. I went back February 2002.
And after the handover.
Handover was 97. So, there's lots of impacts. But basically, I had 10 grand, and between February till about October, it was so difficult to find a full-time job.
Yeah.
And my cash was running out. And I was setting my thoughts on returning back to UK because I couldn't find a full-time job. And then got the break. I managed to join a Big Four. I don't know how I managed it.
So one of the biggest four accounting firms.
Audit firms
in the
out
world.
there, KPMG. They actually interviewed me twice. They interviewed me once, and I think that was the financial services division, and they rejected me. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get a full-time job here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe go back. Because obviously I came from a very small village. I came from a city, and the experience in that city was probably not recognized in a big city, right? So I wasn't given my shot to the title, essentially.
They didn't know your ability to grind.
Well, I think, possibly. Within a couple of weeks, I got another phone call from KPMG and said, "Hey, Tony, can you come into the interview?" And I thought, it's a bit strange. I got rejected from them. So that, in my mind, don't care. Maybe I got lucky. Maybe it's like a big, company where, left hand wasn't talking to the right hand. Maybe a different department saw something in my CV that the financial services department didn't. So I got an interview with what we call more of a fintech division. I can't remember the acronym that they use, but basically that division was auditing not financial services, anything that's not financial services. So it'll be like factories, electronics, institutions, as in, private schools. I was designated to that division. So I started my journey with them the back end of 2002. And my thinking behind that was, I grew up in a village. I was trained in a small office of 50 people. And I wanted a big city CV, big city, employer in my CV, and hopefully, test my limits. And I wanted like a Big Four natural progression because I didn't get my chance to get into Big Four when I graduated. Now it was like, okay, I've qualified. Now I want a big name, experience, blah, 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 onto my work experience. And that's why I actually joined KPMG, and they didn't recognize my experience. So I started almost at the beginning.
So they didn't know who you were.
And yeah. And
so Tony, you've progressed significantly in your career. You started a family in Hong Kong. Why the decision to come to Canada? Like you were already doing well.
Yes, I mean,
and just for folks who don't know, what is the tax rate? What is the personal income tax rate?
16.5% salary tax.
16.5%, and that's on any income.
Yes,
right.
Typically, I mean, on average.
On
right?
average, folks.
Yeah. And so, to give you some the journey in the Big Four.
That's like our sales tax here.
yeah, you could say that 13%. Yeah.
So you're making good money, paying almost no tax.
But why leave?
So why leave?
Yeah. Well, and give you some context as well. When I started my career with Big Four, it was also a time where they started doing like a lot of the mainland companies were doing IPOs in Hong Kong. So I was very fortunate, right place, right time. From 2002 to 2008. I left in 2009, roughly. And in that 7-year journey, because of the demand supply of, people they needed to audit, I tripled my salary from 2002 and 2009.
Right. And your income tax rate doesn't change.
Doesn't really change.
Versus it does here. We have
another thing.
What's it called? What's our marginal tax rate?
Yeah, marginal tax rate.
Right. Versus yours flat.
Typically, it's flat.
You're living the dream.
Living the dream, but I was doing 80 hours plus.
Ooh, okay.
I was doing 80 hours plus, but I was able to. I would say I was very resilient, and I wouldn't say use the word endure, but I was a massive experience because.
But you have 2 young kids at home.
Not at the time.
Okay.
Not at the time back in the 08. So it was really a mass like that. That 7 years passed by like no one's business because we were working in day out, and our colleagues were our family. Because to see them more
than your family.
We just went home to sleep. Right? And then obviously I met Verna, my wife, and I wanted to change. Not everyone's cut up to be a partner in Big Four. I didn't see myself in that. So I got to like a senior manager level for a year. And then I went to a recruitment startup to come out, get out of my comfort zone for a couple of years. And then I went back to accounting, my bread and butter, for about 4 years. And then I joined, at the time, a startup in Hong Kong with 10 people. And
you're from a big company to a small company.
It will, yeah. And this small company was investing their footprint in Asia, and they were a multinational. So in the 4 years that I was with them, from 2014 and 2018, that business grew from 10 to hundreds. And being like the accounting function, we were supporting like 10 people to supporting hundreds of people in that 4 years. And in the end, we were also supporting the India business. So my function was supporting 10 people to over 1,000 people in the space of 4 years. So
this is the same company that
I came over with.
That you just left?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was 2018. And then obviously, rewinding it. So met Werner, we got married, and then we had 2 kids. We lived in a shoebox of 700 square feet net in Hong Kong.
And what's that 700 square feet worth?
We had a massive mortgage, but basically, roughly on average, a square feet was 3,000 Canadian dollars per square feet net.
Oh, okay. That's a good deal, isn't
it? And, we were considered, I never considered myself as middle class, but in terms of the size of the apartment that we were living, we were considered middle class. So you can imagine the value, not my wealth, please repeat that, not my wealth. The value of the property at the time was maybe 2.5 million CAD, 700 square feet. And I think at the time, my wife and I was discussing for a year, Hong Kong is not for us in terms of raising a family. Things that now I appreciate and value, like clean air, space, a garden, a garage, wasn't there. And living in a condo, and there's not enough room for the kids to grow up.
And so, let me just hold on for a second. For the listeners' benefit, now think about that. Tony's middle class. His home cost $2.5 million.
Cost
$2.5 million for 700 square feet, right? So when people have the financial means to come to Canada, 2.5 goes a long way. You don't even have to spend 2.5 million. You can spend. Can you share what you spent when you bought your house in Oakville?
Obviously less than that, but the 2.5 that it was worth, we were probably 90% mortgage, right? But it was more. Something had to give. Something had to give in terms of work-life balance. How we were living, and another key thing is the kids' education. In kids' education, there. You can go public or private, and even if it's a private school, you're not entitled to go there. You have to get tests. And
how much is private school?
Anything and everything. In terms of like one of the English private schools, I think their fees were something like, I would say, you had to kind of donate a debenture, right? And that debenture could be, I would say, on my head, maybe anything between 50,000 to 100,000 CAD.
Right.
To be considered.
To be considered, okay.
And then your kids will have
tested and qualified.
Yeah. And obviously, my Abigail, my eldest, everyone has their journey. She's having hers. She was not so fortunate in her interviews, so we were not able to get in a school that we felt that she could manage and excel in.
She's strong-willed.
Strong-willed, yes. Free-spirited. And maybe that's something that, I can only speak for my personal journey, but maybe in Asia and some of the schools, that's not something that they desire because maybe they want robots, right? Yeah. I don't know. But that's my kind of feel of it. Yeah. So we felt that
they weren't easy.
Yeah. And to give you another idea, another, challenge that we had was even to apply for these schools, Werner and I was waiting in a queue 6 a.m. in the morning to get an application form. And there was, like everyone got an application form, but essentially you had to queue up for an application form. Some people would be, camping out the night before for all these desirable schools. And, we went through a couple of years of that and thought, well, no, this is not for us. And Verna, also born in Hong Kong, spent her teens and her education in Toronto with her siblings here. So she felt that, Toronto and Ontario was the place that she would like to come back because there would be opportunities. It was either Canada or Scotland. But Scotland, comparatively, there's not as much opportunities for us. So at the time when we decided, I handed in my notice to the multinational that, quite grateful and thankful for. And they said, like, hey, Tony, where are you going? I said, well, my wife and I were, I'm sorry I have to leave, great time, great opportunity, but we're going to Canada. But actually, our group has an office in Toronto and they don't have a financial controller. Would you be interested? Yeah. Obviously I bit their hand off because there's two things I think that's very dear. Obviously your family. The next thing is, how is Verna and I going to support a family here? Right? I'm, 40 something.
It ain't cheap here either.
Ain't cheap here. And the taxes are a lot higher, right? And, I was very grateful and thankful for the opportunity where, a job was made for me.
Yeah.
And essentially we migrated the accounting function from their US operations to the Canada operations. And this company, forever grateful and thankful for them to support my transfer. They've got a headcount of hundreds as well. And first week there, I was welcomed and I didn't need any time to transition. And that's, a credit to that company as well as Canada and Ontario as a whole, because I really, really felt the inclusive. I think what we hear and what we listen to, what we read is Canada, all inclusive. We include everyone. No one gets left out in terms of minorities. To give you a feel why I want to emphasize that was, I was obviously accepted and well received in that village, but in appearance, I was different. In Hong Kong, I looked the same, but my culture, my language, yes, I speak Chinese and Cantonese, but in Hong Kong, I was considered, derogatory in our world. I was considered like a banana. What that means is, in appearance, I was yellow-skinned, but deep down, I was Western, I was white. So again, I had this challenge where in my own, country, my city of birth, I felt out of place because my culture was different, my upbringing was different. And when I came to Canada, I felt I found my home, home of homes, where I look different, my culture is different, but it was an inclusive culture. And to really emphasize that point, my team that worked with me and together, we had Canadian Thai, we had a Swiss Thai gentleman, we had a local Canadian, and we had another lady from, an immigrant from Asia as well. So even within my team, it was multinational. So I felt like from day one, like Canada is like really, really inclusive, and and forever like grateful for that and how this this culture works here.
Yeah, no, I don't know how it works other places, but like here, we don't really care about people's backgrounds. We just want the job done.
Yeah,
we want our clients taken care of.
Yeah, and I think if you've grown up here, you wouldn't notice that. If you've grown up here, and maybe like you've probably heard Erwin's earlier stories, right? When you go to the school, like you might be the only Chinese family. It's really, really different now. But I'm saying like, because I've lived in a village, I've, encountered, challenges then when I look different. And then I go to Hong Kong, and obviously even with my accent, whether I'm using, whether I'm in a taxi or whatever, then I feel it's also not being discriminated. I feel out of place in either setting. But in Canada, I feel I look different, and and my culture is different. But majority of the people that walks of life that I've met, they're all immigrants, and everyone has their immigrant story. I feel, as in, well, I don't know how to work a sprinkler. I don't know how to, like, things
Barbecue.
like that. How to barbecue, never done that, like in that kind of a style, in that kind of setting. Things like that, just little things. And, buying things online, back when in Hong Kong, I would just go to a hard store and just give the spare part to someone that's serving me. And then he'd give it to me. And that, like, it was a massive learning curve on, like going to Home Depot, going to the app first. Do they have a stock? What aisle it is? All that. That was like the first 3 months.
They have an app? Wow.
Yeah, like everything has an app. You can actually find the quantities and which aisle to actually locate that part. It's nuts. But good for you.
I didn't know.
Yeah, but just massive learning curve. Yeah.
All right, Tony, so this is an investing show.
Okay, sorry. I got carried away there.
So you're working like 200-hour weeks. You're making executive pay. Yet you decide to start a side hustle in real estate investing.
Yes.
Why? You're already making lots of money. You own a big house, really big fancy house in a really prestigious area in Oakville. Why do you need more real estate?
I think like my background is accounting. So naturally I'm quite conservative. And naturally I don't take risks. And having to sell up everything in Hong Kong and start over, obviously I started off as one of Erwin's clients as well. And I was asking Erwin and the community, like, where do you guys invest? Real estate, Tony. Like, where? Hamilton. Okay, cool, Hamilton. Who do you know? Oh, speak to Tammy. Mm-hmm. And work with Tammy.
Tammy DiTomaso, the duplex queen. Yep.
Yeah. And we started off our journey with Tammy, and you can read my review of Tammy as well as a customer at the time. And we were quite fortunate, and about 14, 16 months ago, we invested in 2 duplexes. One was detached and needed work in the basement to convert. Mm-hmm. And again, I said to Erwin and Tammy, who do you use as a renovator? Mm-hmm. Speak to Manny. Yeah. So to me, like personally, it was a no-brainer because I'm new kid on the block. Like naturally, I'm very conservative. There's always going to be like marketing all out there and who can help you, blah, blah, blah. On my world, me personally, I'm always looking for referrals because for me, I want to minimize my risk and maximize my probability of success or maximize my probability. It's going to be less hassle for me.
Right.
And again, Manny, sorry, I can't remember his surname. It begins with Cabral. Yeah. And again, praises to them. They made it painless for me. Mm-hmm. And I was able to invest in 2 duplexes. One was obviously a new build on the basement reno, full reno, strip out. You can follow Manny's blog and I think he's got a video on it as well on how he converted it. No pain for me at all whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And because I'm a novice, he was able to give me recommendations and give me like, benefit and cost. It was not all about the money. It was more the service. And converted that. And then we'd rented both of these out. And again, through Tammy, like, how do you go about looking for tenants? And obviously not Tammy's. I don't want to commit Tammy to any listeners out there. But Tammy was like, Tony, you don't know what you're doing. Yes, Tammy, I don't know what I'm doing. And Tammy was very nice enough to go outside of her way to, advertise for us and to filter those tenants. And then obviously Vern and I would be interviewing them, meeting them, and then we'd make the final decision. But we didn't have a clue, being newbies on how this works in Hamilton. Yeah.
Well, just even in Canada.
In Canada,
you're not familiar with our credit report system.
Yeah, the credit report, what kind of contract, lease, and whether it's like our
lease documents.
Yeah, lease documents, and touch upon a sale and purchase. And again, basically, Erwin and his community have a ready-made, I would say, not referral system, contacts in people that they work with themselves, between them, complementary. And then we use their lawyer and pre. Mm-hmm. So it was like a no-brainer. So very, very painless. And yes, experience it yourself, demand and supply. And also in terms of you can compare quotes, whatnot, it's your own personal journey. And for me, it was like referrals. And it was a no-brainer. So we managed to close 2 properties very, very quickly. And we bought those 2 properties within, I would say, about 3 months of each other. And then the one that we did full reno took a year with Manny. And neither of them had tenants. So you can imagine the full repertoire of not knowing anything.
I guess we brought you from out of country to real estate investor.
And basically...
Successful real estate investor.
Yeah, and basically it accelerated that journey than finding out painfully like ourselves and finding out ourselves. Yeah.
Because not only were you using our referrals, you were using the people we actually use in our own projects.
That was why we wanted to follow that path, because it was like, Erwin, like, we sold everything and we've got a little bit of money as a deposit. Where do you invest? Hamilton. I was like, I think basically I was rewalking some of the journeys, whether it's Erwin personally and some of Erwin's other clients, because obviously how I work is, I want to make sure that people that I work with are within the community and they've worked with, similar circumstances. And that basically accelerated our path. And then, we've held them for 14 months. And you guys will probably have read and heard how well the Hamilton, the
GTA market in general, absolute fire.
Yeah. And we're looking for the long haul. And again, like I wasn't privileged as much in my childhood, but hopefully those properties will pay itself. They are cash generating. As an accountant, that was one of our prerequisites because we didn't have any spare cash. And hopefully in 20 years time, 30 years time, once the mortgage is paid off, then there's something that we could leverage off for our kids' education when they grow up. And what I found in the last 12 months was it was an investment, but it was only a wealth builder, not an income generator. I think that's a key point, a key learning on my part, personally.
Can you share numbers on your first property? Do you remember what you paid for it?
It was, you can find it from the MLS or whatever, Google, you'll find. But basically, the first property, top of my head, it was about 470.
That's it?
470 detached. I can't remember East or West Mountain. Please ask our duplex queen. She's more, she's more attuned to it than I am. 460.
Okay, hang on.
468, top of my head. And then...
do you remember your reno costs?
Reno was, I would say, we had to do a roof, and that's not many, but, we did the roof, we did the drive, as in the drive to make it legal.
Double wide, yeah.
I think my end cost was around, I would say about 600,000.
Any idea what it's worth today?
No idea, not interested, but I hear it's probably maybe 750, maybe.
Yeah, maybe more.
Yeah, just looking at some of the email comms that I get from yourself and your teams, right?
Yeah. See, it's only been 14 months and you have 150K uplift already.
Yeah, that would imply, do the math. Not rocket science. So whatever deposit I got put in, I've recouped my deposit. I've not done any refinancing, not interested, because I want that property to still be self-financing, so I don't need to draw that money out, but essentially on a capital amount, and realize my appreciation is basically my deposit in 14 months. It's wild, really wild.
Crazy, eh?
Thanks to you guys and your team.
Yeah.
Not a sell, because I entered that journey as a customer, right? So it's from a customer's journey. And then my second property, which is a turnkey, it was kind of funny because obviously Tammy knew what Verna and I was looking for. And obviously it was too much for us to chew at the time because we bought the first property and we're doing a full reno. And naturally, because this is the first entry into the investment world in Hamilton, we were a bit, weary. And then Tammy, as she does, she said, Tony, I've come across a turnkey duplex. Do you want to come and look? And I thought, yeah, we'll go to look and check the furnishings because we need ideas on do the full reno. We looked at it and thought, wow. Turnkey. Everything's done. No hassle.
No hassle.
No tenants.
Yeah.
Cool.
Already legal.
And it was legal.
Permits. Yeah.
And so I didn't have the anxiety. And obviously, because Manny is well versed, and we were also using
Andy,
another part of the community that your customers and your community uses.
He's an old friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
And basically, this ready-made duplex turnkey. And at the time, we were just, looking at it to see what ideas we could get for our basement rental. And then my wife and I said, hey, this looks pretty amazing. But didn't we just put in deposit on our rental? I'd say.
Oh, you're mid-rental while you're looking at this house.
Not even started.
Not even started.
I think we looked at this second investment probably within a month of closing. And thought, is this too quick?
Yeah.
One does not know. One does not know with hindsight what is going to turn out.
Yeah.
I thought, and then obviously my wife being an accountant as well, we did the numbers on it. And obviously we had market intel from Tammy on what the rents are.
Yeah.
Naturally, as an accountant, will this work on numbers? And it worked in terms of cash positive. Thought, well, no brainer. So we didn't have, anything influence us as in, hey, next door selling this and that. Our journey was, if it's cash positive, we had to deposit. If we get a loan and if we can close this property at the price that we're willing to pay, no brainer. So I thought, okay, we'll put in an offer. If it works, it works. Doesn't, walk away. So that's my learnings of it. And we got that property, I think, for less than $630. Turnkey.
Yeah.
And again, I can't remember, like to this day, I can't figure out my west and east mountain.
That's okay.
But it's on South Bend, east. Very quiet area.
Do you remember what the rents are?
My rent is upstairs was $1,795. My basement rent is probably around $1,600.
$1,600?
So I'm getting about $3,400. And the key, and again from Tammy, market intel, I would know better, plus utilities.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah, because it's so variable.
Yes. So just very, very happy, very, very grateful that I walked that journey. And again, obviously, with that 14 months, under my belt, it was like, okay, Erwin, what else are you doing? What else are you dabbling?
Dabbling. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And then I think at the time it was stock hacking, October 19th.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
And then I joined that beta course. And obviously at the time, because we were the beta group and we obviously got the early bird discount, blah, 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 and thought, well, again, what I like about this community is they actually go through it themselves and invest and put their money in it to understand it before they kind of publicize it, and share it within the community. So I thought at the time, what else are you dabbling? I've got my 2 properties, which I'm not quite sure of, because 14 months ago, we didn't have the explosion of the, increase in value, right? It was more like, okay, put a couple of deposits down, the rent's paying for itself. Okay, are we ready for a third one? No, just going to sit tight. Because one, I'm not even able to refinance anything, right? So we're kind of stuck in terms of financially. And then about 14 months ago, it was all about, that was what triggered, I think either yourself or one of your speakers on one of these webinars said, listeners, property, if you've got them, good on you. Appreciated lots, you've got cash flow, but the cash flow is actually from refinancing. But it's not true cash flow. You have to pay for your mortgage, right? You have to pay them back. You have to pay them, And I thought, well, that's a wealth builder. And someone said that on that webinar, and that triggered my thought, hey, I need an income generator. And then at the time when we were chatting, you had that beta course, Saw Hacker's first course, where
you could always just flip houses for income.
Well, coming from a different country, just entered that, market, and I'm more of a long-term investor. I thought, well, and from Werner's family, they also, they have investment properties, and they taught me that it's easy to dispose of them, sell them, but it's actually hard to accumulate them. Once you accumulate and you want to flip them, the market has gone up. Like, to give you an idea, back in Hong Kong, we were staying in a small flat. If I was to flip it and buy a bigger house, I would lose money, because a bigger house, the square footage would be 5,000 per square feet. It's disproportionate. The average square feet, like 3,000 per square feet, is for that kind of size of condos.
It goes up if you get bigger? Because the opposite is true here.
Because demand and supply. There's not many to give you an idea, The 700 square feet net had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and it had obviously had a kitchen, and there was 4 adults, 2 kids, and a cat.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you an idea on, a different way of life there. And having come from that and understanding, hey, it's very easy to sell something. But if you were to accumulate, if I was, like, as an example, I have no disrespect, I don't have a clue about Hamilton. If I was to move from east side to west side, yes, I've made money on my east side, but then I've lost money going to the west side. So why bother? To my mind, right? So I want to wealth build and keep those houses if I can financially afford it.
Right. Well, didn't you laugh when you found out you could buy houses bigger than your condo for $470?
That might
be a bit of culture shock, wouldn't it?
Well, I think.
And then consider what you paid for your house in Oakville.
Yeah, I think it's more perspective. I don't take anything for granted, and everywhere is different. It's all market forces and market demand and supply, right? And obviously, I guess Oakville, Burlington, and a lot of Etobicoke, all these are spillover of downtown Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously impacts the prices and happens in a different market.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, my wife and I cannot afford an investment property near a hole.
Right.
And that's why we want to,
well, that's why you want to look at cash flow.
Where I've got the affordability and yet it's cash flow.
And
right?
Cash flow.
I guess I've never worked on the numbers. One, the price range is outside our means. But I can imagine if you're paying 1.5 or whatever plus for a house in Oakville or nearer Toronto, GTA, then your rents will still be, 2,000-3,000. So the numbers don't make sense.
Yeah. It's even tough to cash flow an apartment building at that price point.
Exactly. And again, the numbers has always been something that we have to make it financially work because we don't have any spare cash to pay for the mortgage.
Right. So then you mentioned you were where you were in your journey was you're now seeking for cash flow. So how's that stock hacking journey? So you had the same problem that I did. Your wife is, I think your wife is still better at it than you are.
Yes, yes, she is. So about 14 months ago,
and she loves this.
She loves this. Yeah, it's her side gig as well, and she's beaten me big time.
And she did no prior experience.
She didn't attend any of the courses.
Oh, she didn't even attend the courses.
She did not. No. I was just through speaking to within our community.
Oh.
But I wouldn't recommend it because my wife, she gets adrenaline rush. I kind of a private joke with her that, it's real money, but at times she treats it as adrenaline as well as more like a monopoly.
Yeah. So
it's not structured.
Mm-hmm.
It's haphazard,
mm-hmm.
but she's still beating me. That's her journey. I would never recommend it. That's so different to how she was trained also as an accountant to be conservative, to be measured.
Mm-hmm.
But, it gives you an example on in stock hacking or option trading that there's all spectrums and it's your personality and your character.
Mm-hmm.
And my thoughts are, I wouldn't jump straight in because if you jump straight in, you don't know what you're up against. Yeah. And you don't know in terms of yes, there might be right now, all these acronyms and, FOMO and everything. In my experience, the market will always spike. The market will also reside. If you're not well equipped, it's no different to you going to a casino.
Mm-hmm.
And the odds are, against you
mm-hmm.
because you're up against more experienced people that are going to take your money away.
Mm-hmm.
So I would never recommend it. I'm just sharing you my wife Verna's journey, which is not recommended.
No, it's not recommended.
Like a specimen how you should not start your journey.
Right.
And then I can share my journey and then start your journey
mm-hmm.
if you're up for it.
Mm-hmm.
So 14 months ago, I went to that beta course and I downloaded the app, the Interactive Brokers app, and then I did paper trading for maybe 2-3 months. So this is from October 19 to about Feb 2020.
Oh, terrible. Oh, great time.
Yeah, great time. And I was doing naked puts. And
that's sarcastic, folks.
Yeah. And great times. What I found was in paper trading, and I recommend that, it gives you a feel for the functionalities because one, I'm learning the theory. Two, am I able to apply that theory into a tool that I need to transact? So the paper trading is
getting comfortable with the device, with the tool.
Very, very much recommended, because even if there's an opportunity out there, you swipe a buy into a sell, or vice versa, then you're in big, big trouble.
Yeah, you make mistakes.
And to this day, I still make mistakes because it's that easy. And the main thing is you read it, you kind of do your order, you look at the draft, and you look at once it's filled, whether directionally it makes sense. As in, if you're selling something, you should be getting a credit. So lots of little nuances that...
Lots of nuances.
I would
which
not...
is why it's advisable to take a course.
Yes, which is why I would not recommend doing it my wife's way.
Right. But to Verna's credit, though, she's quite bright.
Yes.
So I think that's partly why she can pick it up so quickly, and also her community is strong. And this market's pretty, it's not that hard to make money in.
Yes. So, and then...
and also just to
sure.
Her situation is similar to ours, is that we're not actually exposing that much risk because it's such a small portion of our investment portfolio. Like my investment portfolio is well over 80% real estate. So I have lots of boring, safe and secure real estate. I can take some liberties with what I consider house money. And there's probably a similar situation with you guys as well. This isn't a big portion of your net worth.
We haven't refinanced anything yet, so
you might be motivated to. Look at these prices you're getting.
Baby steps.
Oh, again, actually, let's take a step back. So yeah, you mentioned that turnkey property. Let's just finish that off. Turnkey property. So you paid $630 for it. It's likely worth over $750 today. So you have an uplift of $120,000 in 13 months.
Yeah. And then on the South Bend, and Tammy with Market Intel says to me, "Hey Tony, would you be interested? Or do you know there's a South Bend house being sold, duplex, turnkey, just a couple of houses from you." Now it wasn't like marketing to say like, "Do you want to buy it?" But it was more like, "Did you know?" So I was like very curious on what the price was, and I think it's sold for just under 800. It's nuts. It's crazy. Yeah, and again, like very grateful for having that opportunity. And we were able to accelerate with the community's help and sharing stories with each other and who we use and who we can trust.
Yeah, I think you need to push for some refis on these houses.
Sorry, was that?
You have variable mortgages? Variable
we've got variable, but we will pay a penalty. But I'm not interested in,
I'll talk to Verna.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tony.
Yeah. We've got separate accounts on IB. So yeah, she has her fun, and I have my income generating.
Can you share some results?
Yeah. Now, just to give you a feel, just to walk back, about February, I started Naked Puts, and just the lessons that I've learned. That for listeners who are joining the March Academy. I was just doing, Lee's trades on Naked Puts, cover calls when I get assigned, and deep in money calls. But from about March onwards, with COVID and everything. Sorry, just thinking back, that was like March 2020. So about March 2020, and obviously our world changed, and also my employment is a bit of a challenge, but I'm pretty sure everyone has their battles and challenges at work as well. I was not able to be active on stock hacking and options. I think pre-COVID, I was about 30% year on year. And obviously, by the end of December 2020, I was only 10%. So I was still up. But there's things that I've learned through that where I could have done better. But I was just not really active. I was taking my loss positions because I couldn't actually have time to look at my trades and, or even understand how to fix them or adjust them. And again, that's, that might be a little bit beyond, right? But the main thing is, in March, if you're doing Naked Puts, you either get assigned if you had the money to be assigned.
You're getting whacked.
Or you needed to close your Naked Put positions at a loss. So without much time, and my work, consumed that time. I basically took 20% hit.
That's not bad. I did worse than that.
And obviously, it was worse than that, but then it came back up, and I think when we chatted around Christmas time, 2020, you said, "Hey, we're doing Stock Hacking Academy. and we need someone to, you're investing in Stock Academy to have someone dedicated to do this full time. And I, again, bit your hand off because I'm doing investment property investing. I have or had employment income, and I had no time to stock hack or stock option trade.
Or parent.
Or
husband.
Better not touch that point. I guess Werner won't be listening to this, so I might be all clear. And something had to give. So, I tendered my resignation with my forever grateful to them, to my employer, who brought me over from Asia, and tendered my resignation, served my notice, and then I joined Stock Hacker Academy full-time at the end of January.
What's your title again?
VP. Title doesn't really matter to me. More like, what am I going to be doing and what am I going to be immersed in? Because having my startup back when, helping that 10-man shop in Hong Kong about 6.5 years ago, we were in a service office, smaller than this office that you have. If the water needed changing, I'll change the water. Doesn't matter. Everyone, rolls up the sleeves, dig in. And then when they said, hey, Tony, in our first 12 months, we grew it to, 3 digits, headcount. And he said, Tony, we need a new office. So I went out in Hong Kong, procured offices, renovations, IT service provider, blah, 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 all that. It was really, it's just been my journey in terms of getting stuck in. Mm-hmm. And again, the title doesn't matter to me, but rather what am I doing? So I'm hopefully able to gel everything together and walk through the steps of how we are going to make Stock Hacker Academy successful, bigger, brighter, dedicated services. And we've all got open communications, as well as with our viewers and listeners out there on how we can make this better and brighter, because we've got a dedicated resource. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's why I wanted to join. I want to.
You took a big pay cut too.
Yes, and I think that's the key, as in balancing. Yeah,
that's the key.
So it's not. The key in terms of, it's not the money. The key is, what am I getting as a life journey, and in terms of walking and following some steps that you guys have done as a community, as a business. I hope to learn one day to run, whether it's a Stock Hacker Academy and how we can, build this and, run our own respective businesses. Who knows, right? I think it's more like what I'm losing in salary or remuneration, I'm learning from an IP perspective, intellectual property, and understanding the theory of stock hacking and what we have to offer, and apply it personally, because maybe I want to retire 10, 15 years, but I can still stock hack and earn an income because my property hasn't paid itself, right? And if I refinance, it means my mortgage payments will increase, which means it's not cash positive. Mm-hmm. Where am I going to generate my steady income? Mm-hmm. And maybe in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, I don't have that energy to do 40, 60 hours. Mm-hmm. Or I want to be in a warmer climate. Mm-hmm. Where am I going to generate that income? And no brainer for me personally, stock hacking. But again, don't jump in, be measured, read about it, make your own decisions. Mm-hmm. And if you have your journey, even if it's not with us, good on you. But we're here to share our story, and hopefully you can join us and, share your story with us one day on your successes. And it's not about bragging the successes, but it was more, hey, I have my employment, I do 40, 60 hours, and I've got this side gig. And that's something that's attracted me to the Stock Academy and Erwin and Cherry's businesses and what they want to achieve. I want this side gig to be my full-time gig and to replace my employment income. So then my employment is my hobby rather than, like a rat race. I left 24 years of accounting, profession, blah, 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 because I want to get out of that rat race, to be honest with you. And that rat race was basically, steady income, good income, and cash flow, and pay my mortgage. but I'm not able to churn my money because I'm restricted in terms of, yes, I get bonuses, forever grateful. I get promotions and salary increases, but I don't manage that. I'm not in control. I'm not in control of my, my investment. And being in Stock Hacker Academy, yes, I get a salary, but I can also earn and manage my own money in generating income. I think one of your questions was, how am I doing with my stock hacking now, right? So full-time for you today and early days yet, right? And I'm also, we've just finished our own beta course on advanced course. And my January or YTD year-on-year return is 14 and a bit percent.
Fantastic.
14 and a bit percent.
So for folks, today is February 5th, year to date, 14% return.
14%.
Right.
I mean, obviously yesterday the market was a lot higher, right? But I think when it was like Wednesday, when the market was not so great, I think, if you're looking at the portfolio analysts, I think my return was like 9% year on year. And again, not comparing, it's apples and oranges. I don't think one gets 9% cash from your investment properties, to give you perspective.
Not in 1 month.
Maybe a year, or you'd be lucky with like 6% yield, right, on investment property per se annually.
Yeah, but this is a competition. So what's your wife making?
I think her YTD was just under 15%. Right? Again, this is not a recommendation of how you do it. It's just sharing. Like, what I like about the community is real people, real lives, and real stories. And just want to share my story. And maybe tomorrow it tanks, and I have to say, well, my YTD's gone down to 5%. But as I self-learn, as I continue to, I go through our own materials as well as research out there, I hope to be able to, in due course, find my own stocks that I believe in, enter it into a certain measured fashion, comparing the risk and reward. And on top of that, I hope to develop the skills to adjust these trades. So then I can, from looking at some of the people in the community, they're able to convert losers into winners. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's the key. Because I think everyone knows what our blue chip stocks are. I think everyone knows what these dividend kings are. Very, very easy to Google. But again, it's your risk profile, your account size, and what you're willing to accept as a return. And I think if you learn the full repertoire and you've kind of survived the crash of COVID, then again, it puts, miles on the clock, even psychologically, on how to be a better trader. And this is a lifelong skill. And that's why I'm here to, learn, help. And it's also a skill that I keep myself, mm-hmm. right? And to continue that, hopefully, income generating float coming in.
I can't wait for you to experience your own real estate crash.
Not yet, but I was in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's had some interesting
pretty
real
crazy.
estate.
It's been pretty crazy. It's been crazy.
What triggered the most recent Hong Kong real estate correction?
Well, obviously, COVID,
the riots.
Right, and COVID.
Yeah.
Because this is like this chat. This is not recommendation. There's no stock recommendation. This is not a political broadcast either.
Yeah, the same political folks.
Nothing at all.
We want to be able to travel back to China.
Yes. The main thing is
we love China.
There's protests, and as you would note, for any economy, any market, instability impacts anything and everything.
Yeah, including the real estate market.
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you an idea, my view of the world of Hong Kong is that it's a very, very different market. The salary taxes are quite low, say 16%, and the certain percentages. But it's so low because there's indirect tax on property. And what I mean by that, there's limited land. So the private developers, there's only a few, and there's like family owned, blah, blah, blah. Yes, they're all listed. and again, this is not about anything, or this is my view of the world. The government raises funds by selling pieces of land of Hong Kong to developers. So obviously, you can imagine the land is getting sold at billions of dollars, Hong Kong dollars. And then that's a cost of building a condo, which the developers recycle back to the consumer, be it on rents or be it on, buyers, right? So then, yes, from a government perspective, low salary tax, but then your developers are actually, taxing you per se, recycled back to the consumer. So I think, on the whole, that's why Hong Kong property is so high in terms of cost base. Never mind margin, because the cost base is so high.
But also, just to add to that, Hong Kong has about 2 million people in government housing, some sort of form of subsidized housing. So that is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
Right? We what do we have in here? A couple 100,000? Couple 100,000 folks in a country of 35 million versus Hong Kong, 7 million. They have 2 million people in government and subsidized housing.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
And then you touched upon another point that, I grew up in a housing estate, and my mom's extended family, my uncles and aunties, I think there was maybe, I would say like five uncles and aunties, plus my grandparents, plus my cousins, because it was basically like a we have these crash now, right? Crash and baby, childcare. My grandparents were childcare, right, for my cousins. So it was like, housing estate, probably 400 square feet, and that was the upbringing. So very, very fortunate where I am, and very fortunate, how we got here, and very fortunate with, just the community on sharing these stories and how we can level up and encourage each other. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there with humbling beginnings. And the thing is to be grateful for what we have and get our stories out there to hopefully encourage them. Maybe, doesn't have to be with stock. This is not marketing. This is, maybe not with Stock Hacker Academy. It doesn't matter. It's part of the community. Same like-minded people share the stories, not a brag, because everyone has their own battle and their own journey. And everyone, can get there if I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, your immigration to Hong Kong seems a lot harder than your immigration to Canada. It's not easy with kids and all that sort of stuff, but and financially, I think it worked out okay coming to Canada.
And another thing that might resonate with listeners here, and if you're, and I have no disrespect, from maybe immigrants as well. My father swam from China to Hong Kong as an illegal immigrant back in the day, and he got caught a few times, right? And
put in jail.
I don't know what it was, but get put back, right?
Yeah.
But anyway,
I'm sure he had to spend some time in jail.
Yeah, and he was in his, I would say, mid-teens, and that was his journey. So and things were very, very different now, and everyone is, I would say, very privileged, where there's some kind of health and housing, right, for people. And yes, again, this is not political in terms of it can always be better. But when you've grown up from a housing estate and your father, had nothing, no shoes, no nothing, and started from nothing, I think it gives you perspective to try a bit harder each day to, better one's life, I hope. And obviously, a key element of that is if people gives you that opportunity to show what you're worth, I think.
Cool. Tony, we're running out of time. We're way over time. Do you have any final words for the listener?
I think wherever you are in your journey, life in general, I think having like-minded people, like-minded friends, and encourage each other. And, there's so much material out there that you can read up on and level up, It doesn't have to be Netflix every night, There's so much material. What I found now, compared to when I started, there's so much free material. Yes, there's lots of marketing, blah, blah, blah. Read up on it. And then come back and see whether what we're offering, not marketing, is something that resonates with you. That would be my final words. And good luck in your journey.
That's awesome. It's just to add to what you mentioned. about talking to people and sharing. Just be careful who you're taking advice with, because I think most people, if you share with them what you're up to, what you're trying to get ahead, a lot of them will actually try to pull you down. So make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are going somewhere.
Yep. And also at that point in the journey, there's no point like that point in that part of the journey, because if you have other friends and family or even colleagues who if you're just starting off and you're speaking to someone with like 10, 20 properties, whatever, good on them. But they're not, they can remember part of that journey, but if it's not recent, it's not as applicable to you. So find like-minded people who are just a few steps ahead of you. And if there's something that you want, pick their brains, and it's just sharing, doesn't hurt. And if it resonates with you, take that step, one step at a time. And I hear on Start Hacking Academy, sometimes on the webinars, a lot of our listeners might say, well, how much do I need to start off? I started off my account with 10,000 CAD.
Same.
It is still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But do side hustles and build that account. And it's baby steps. Everyone, you don't have to have so much on your account. And the main thing is, like everything, it's about reading up on it. It's about homework. It's being dedicated. And then it will reap its own benefits in the future.
All right. Thank you again, Tony, for doing this. I don't know if you planned on being here this long. Let's go get lunch. Before you go, if you're interested in learning more about an alternative means of cash flowing like hundreds of other real estate investors have already, then sign up for my newsletter and you'll learn of the next free demonstration webinar I'll be delivering on the subject of stock hacking. It's a much improved demonstration over the one that I gave to my cousin Chubby at Thanksgiving dinner in 2019. He now averages 1% cash flow per week, and he's a musician by trade. As a real estate investor myself, I got into real estate for the cash flow, but with the rising costs to operate a rental business, it's just not the same as it was 5 to 10 years ago when I started. Never forget that cash flow reduces your risk. The more you have, the more lumps you can absorb. And if you have none or limited cash flow, you're going to be paying out of your pocket, like I did on a recent basement flood at my student rental in St. Catharines, Ontario. If you're interested in learning more, register for free for my newsletter at www.truthAboutRealEstateInvesting.ca. Enter your name and email address on the right side. We'll include in the newsletter when we announce our next free stock hacker demonstration. Find out for yourself what so many real estate investors are doing to diversify and increase their cash flow. And if you can't tell, I love teaching and sharing this stuff.